The FBI is investigating a bombshell report that claims Chinese hackers pretended to be top U.S. lawmaker John Molnar during trade talks last July. A series of emails were sent seeking insight on negotiations from top law firms, trade groups, and federal agencies. The Wall Street Journal calling it the latest in a series of alleged cyber espionage campaigns linked to Beijing. Time to potentially deploy spyware against organizations giving input on President Trump's trade negotiations. Trade talks between Washington and Beijing are slow going. The Journal reporting China's latest negotiation tactic: keep talking, give no ground. But Beijing still feeling the pressure of the tariffs on trans-shipments through China. Exports to the U.S. plunged 33% for August. Overall growth slowed to its weakest in 6 months. Joining us now is Gatestone Institute senior fellow Gordon Chang. Gordon, your reaction to all of this?
Well, I think the most important thing is that we don't have those trade talks moving forward. And I think the reason is because of political turmoil in Beijing. When Xi Jinping's future is uncertain, nobody in the Chinese capital, especially Xi himself, feels safe in making concessions. So I don't think there's going to be any clarity after two things happen. One of them is that next month, the Communist Party's Central Committee holds its fourth plenum, and people think that one way or another, Xi's future is going to be clarified. The other thing is at the end of October, you have the APEC meeting in in South Korea, and there Trump and Xi Jinping might actually sit down on the sidelines of the meeting. There might be some clarity after that, but still, I think that Xi Jinping is going to tough this out.
Interesting that you say that, Liz.
Well, yeah, I think that the question is, after that incredible show of force and might, having Narendra Modi and the Russians and everybody, I mean, Xi seems very powerful. Are you suggesting that possibly at the plenum next month he might be deposed?
Or sidelined, or have his wings clipped? That's entirely possible.
And that would be shocking, wouldn't it?
It would be it'd be stunning. I mean, but right now we know that there is instability at the top of the regime, especially at the top of the military, where Xi Jinping's loyalists are being disappeared, and the rumors are that some of them have been actually executed. We don't know, but there are objective factors that suggest Xi Jinping has lost substantial influence in the military. On the civilian side, the evidence is not so clear. But, you know, this has been something that people have been talking about for quite some time. Maria has been actually on this now for about 8 or 9 months. So there's something going on there.
You have been talking about it for a long time, that there is this instability. I mean, but to have it actually come to a head would be pretty remarkable.
What would be remarkable, Liz, is that after all of Xi Jinping's failures over the course of a decade, that nothing happens.
Yeah,
you know,
there's that.
Well, and I think, by the way, just pivoting back to something that Liz brought up, though, is it, you know, that axis of evil show that we got between Modi and Xi and Putin, and then obviously Kim Jong-un, factor in North Korea into this. I mean, this is, despite the sanctions on Russia, despite the trade negotiations, the tariffs on China, these leaders seem to be thumbing their nose at the United States. That's got to be infuriating for the administration right now, especially what they saw last week.
Yeah, but this axis has been in place for a very long time, and it's just we Americans have refused to acknowledge it. But certainly Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, they see the world in the same terms, and they've been coordinating their policies for more than a decade. So, yeah, I mean, what we saw was a demonstration of it, but this has been going on a long time. But also, the other thing about Wednesday's big military parade, I think the Chinese are boasting about weapons that they may not have. Because we have seen in the last 3 to 4 weeks, there's been an unprecedented propaganda from Communist Party and central government media outlets about how good their weapons are. I just think they're boasting a little bit too much right now. So I'm suspicious about how good this stuff is. Because if it was really good, they wouldn't be telling us all the details that we've learned over the last month.
Meanwhile, they've been slow rolling the critical minerals that we need for our defense industry, which we've talked about. I want to ask you about this too, because China's been boosting. This is a report boosting LNG trade with Russia.
Right.
Another test for the Trump administration. The president's been vocal about frustrations with Russia and India for getting so close to Beijing, especially after that huge, military parade that you just mentioned. But at the same time, that the president wrote on Truth Social, looks like we've lost India and Russia to deepest, darkest China. May they have a long and prosperous future together. What did you make about that comment from President Trump? And by the way, just watch this real quick.
Mr. President, who do you blame for losing India to China? In your post earlier today in the morning, you did put that out.
I don't think we have. You know, I've been very disappointed that India would be buying so much oil, as you know, from Russia. And I let them know that. We put a very big tariff on India, 50% tariff, very high tariff. I get along very well with Modi, as you know. He's great. He was here a couple of months ago.
What do you make of all of that, especially that post and then those comments from President Trump? What's happening here, in your opinion?
Well, I think President Trump walked that back a little bit, and he should, because we haven't lost India to China. Remember, Modi, although he did go to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting in Tianjin, he did not go to the parade. And that was a message to China and to the world that he did not want to be part of this anti-Western group that China and Russia, North Korea, and Iran are forming. But, you know, Modi has a point. I mean, he says, look, you know, we're really unhappy with the 25% tariff that the United States imposed on India for buying Russian oil. He said it was unjustified. No, it was not unjustified. That tariff was a good thing for President Trump to do. But Modi has a point when he said it was unfair, because we did not also impose the 25% tariff on China, and China's been buying more Russian oil than India has. As a matter of fact, India, after that tariff, has scaled back Russian purchases while China's taken up the slack. So Trump needs to do something about China really quick.
Absolutely, absolutely. Gordon Chang, it's always great to see you. Thank you for joining us on set today.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah.